Hi, we're going to try doing a Q&A. I've asked for questions on Patreon and I'm going to go through and answer them. So, John Brewer asks, what piece of popular fiction do you think best demonstrates to the general public the practical dangers AI safety is attempting to ward against? This is a difficult question because I don't really consume much science fiction. Partly it's because those kinds of things kind of annoy me a lot of the time with the problems with them. But also I find it quite useful in my work that people sometimes say, oh, you've watched too much sci-fi or whatever. Oh, you're worried about a situation just like such and such film or book or whatever. And it's quite useful to me to be able to say, I don't know, haven't read it. So I don't really have good examples. And I don't mean that to be harsh to people who write science fiction. It's just that people just have different goals, right? If you're writing science fiction, you're trying to write something entertaining. You're writing a story about characters, not about technologies. And you're trying to write a story, right? You're not trying to predict the future. You're trying to create something that's going to be like entertaining to read. So I would say just like don't look to fiction for this kind of thing at all. I think it's better to go more from first principles and just talk through how the technology works and what the likely consequences are. Sorry, my cat is here and she's snoring. I'm trying to record a video. Caleb asks, what are the biggest key points to consider before deciding on a career in AI safety? That's a really big question, and I want to do a video about careers in AI safety. I think I'm in a position now where I could do a good job of that, talk to some careers advice organizations, talk to the people who are hiring, some researchers, and really put together a resource on things people should be thinking about if they're considering this as a career, and like maybe advice on what people could do if this is something that they're interested in working on. So that I'm going to put off answering that because I want to make a video about it. Does AI safety research currently see much commercial funding, or has it been primarily academic? It's a mixture. You have companies like DeepMind, for example, which are private companies. You have a lot of academic institutions. You have OpenAI, which is kind of, I don't honestly really understand what OpenAI is at this point. A capped profit something. So yeah, there's funding from various places, but I think not nearly enough, obviously. 5, how was your day? Yeah, pretty good. Thanks. I had a nice walk on Hampstead Heath because it was sunny. Dolphin, you can stay here if you're quiet. Can you be quiet? Okay. Sylvain Chevalier asks, how much do you feel the respectability of AI safety as a field has changed since your video on the topic? Where do you see AI safety awareness, communication, and your part in it going in the future? Okay, it's 2 questions. So the first question, how has respectability changed? I think it has changed. I think because the field has grown and there's a lot more work being published and people can see that the work being published is interesting, and people have done a quite good job, I think, of pinning down what the problems actually are and specifying that, people have put forward various different ways of formalizing these problems and different specifications of those problems, different desirable criteria that systems might have, and there's been a lot of just kind of clarification. So there's a lot more surface area now where researchers can get stuck in because the problems are better defined and there are benchmarks and there are sort of standardized concepts. And the whole thing is just a lot less confused than it was when I started talking about it. So all of that makes the thing look more like an established field because people have put the work in to establish a field. So it's definitely a lot more respectable than it used to be. So the second question, where do you see AI safety awareness / communication and your part in it going in the future? So I guess early on a lot of what I was doing was just trying to convince people, no, this is a real thing. This is an actual problem that you can do computer science on. Mostly what I was trying to communicate was just, yes, this type of thing is reasonably likely to happen. No, it's not too soon to be thinking about it. Yes, there is technical research to be done here that is difficult and important. So that was like, at the beginning, it was just, there is a real thing here that we need to pay attention to, was like the core of the message. And now that's becoming much more widely accepted. So in future, I would expect my role in communication to be a lot more about just explaining the work that's going on, because it's still so interesting. So it goes sort of moves from advocacy to more standard science communication stuff. David Morgan asks, I keep meaning to understand what's a MESA optimizer, but probably that's a subject for a video in its own right. Yes, it is. Definitely. I do want to do a video about MESA optimizers as soon as I really get my head around exactly how to explain that idea in a way that is broadly accessible, because it tends to be expressed in quite an abstract way, and people who understand optimization pretty well are often still disagreeing with each other, or like unclear on exactly what is meant by that, what counts and what doesn't, and pinning down exactly what the problem is that people are pointing at with MESA optimizers. So yeah, that's one for a future video. That should be a good one if I can ever figure out how to do it. Jake Ehrlich asks, one of your videos that initially got me into this channel was maybe the specific video was on Computerphile, was creating a utility function that was indifferent to the pressing of a stop button. Could you provide information on how to research that topic further? Yeah, I'll put some links up here about that, utility indifference as an approach. How much mainstream media attention should AI safety receive? Should it be on par with concern over nuclear weapons or climate change? No. So, maybe nuclear weapons. The thing about climate change is that the solution requires people to do things differently in their day-to-day lives. Climate change depends on people's choices about things, what they choose to buy, how they choose to get around, that kind of thing. So having the general public be aware of climate change is useful. But when it comes to AI safety, there isn't that much benefit, I think. Like the average person in the street, if they understand AI safety better, they're going to be, it's always good to understand things better and to have a better understanding of, the world that you're in. But practically speaking, day to day, it's not going to have a big effect on how they go about their lives. Like AI safety today does not depend on how you treat Alexa or whatever. So I'm okay with it being something that doesn't receive a huge amount of mainstream attention, but I would like it to be the case that when young people say, I'm interested in working on AI safety, other people say, oh, I hear that that's an important problem, good on you for working on that, as opposed to what they might now say, or what they definitely would have said 5 or 10 years ago, which is oh, don't be silly, that's not a real thing, or something like that, because they don't understand the situation. But yeah, the situation now is that AI safety is receiving, or AI risk anyway, receives a decent amount of mainstream media attention, but it's bad. It's not helpful, it's not informative, and it's not doing any good because of that. So given the sort of general standard of mainstream media attention, I would prefer if it received less attention, to be honest, even though ideally it would be receiving more, but actually useful attention as opposed to what it's currently getting. Kieran George asks, would the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics have any impact on the utility function of an AI that could understand it? So this depends. Basically, if you define your utility function in a way that depends strongly on a particular understanding of quantum physics, and that understanding turns out not to be true, then you can have something like an ontological crisis, where as the AI system learns, it updates its way of understanding the world, and then it might end up in a situation where the very fundamental aspects of how it understands the world are not compatible with the assumptions of the utility function that it's working with, and that can cause problems. You sort of have undefined behavior because the utility function is talking about a concept that ends up being incoherent. So it's possible that you could state your utility function in a way that a better understanding of quantum physics renders irrelevant. Ian Reyes asks, "Hello Robert, I've been a fan since your 2015 computer file videos, and I'm proud to support your great content. Thanks. For the university students out there that share the same concern you have over AI safety, what can we do to be most beneficial to the advancement of safe AI? What area or problem you wish attracted more researchers or funding? Thank you for all your work." So this, I guess, is the kind of thing that I would talk about in a careers video if I did one. To answer the specific questions, I think that right now there are so few people working on this overall that whatever you personally think is the most interesting or important thing is probably the best thing for you to be working on. Nowhere in AI safety is crowded currently, right? So if you think something is interesting, that's what you should work on. There may come a day at some point where some things are very neglected, like really unusually neglected, and then it's worth focusing on them just because other people aren't. But now pretty much everywhere doesn't have enough people working on it, so whatever you want to work on is good. I would also say, I don't think we're anywhere near covering the space yet. Like, there are things that need people working on them that nobody has yet thought of. I'm pretty sure of that. So if you, when thinking about the problem, come up with some interesting area, some aspect of some problem that nobody else has even talked about at all, we're not in the case where we are in most of science, where if you have an original idea, it's almost certainly either wrong or already a thing. We're not there with AI safety. There just hasn't been that many hours of human attention given to this. You are really in with a chance of having found something new. Well, yeah, I don't know anything about you. A good researcher is in with a chance of really finding something new. So there's definitely space for entirely new things that may turn out to be important later. And now Jonathan Mekmandarov asks, "Hi Robert, some AI researchers signed an open letter to ban lethal autonomous weapons. What's your position on this issue?" I actually have a video kind of almost about this. Broadly speaking, yeah, seems like a good idea. I personally do believe that soon any dependence on human decisions in the operation of all weapon systems would render them useless. The day is near when wars will be won in an hour with no human casualties. And this is good, I believe. But while I'm not afraid of Skynet, it is quite scary to think that one day robots will do everything for us and powerful humans will not need to control other humans in order to get what they want. Yes. So I don't know much about the practicalities of automated weapon systems. I do think there's definitely a concern about the use of automated weapon systems by totalitarian regimes. Like, the main way that dictators fall out of power is military coup. They're not able to keep the military happy enough, and then somebody else promises them something better and they get replaced. And so yes, the fewer people you have to have on side, the easier it is to maintain an autocratic rule. So there's definitely a potential for sort of AI-enabled, stable, totalitarian or authoritarian governments. And having a treaty against autonomous weapons, I guess, would help with that. In general, I think treaties against weapons have a pretty good track record. Like, one thing that people don't realize is that lasers are potentially very, very good in warfare for blinding people. And it's not a thing because before anybody really developed one that was practical, there was a treaty. And so those technologies were never developed. Those weapon systems were never developed. So this kind of thing can work quite well, and you sort of don't notice when it's doing its job well. So yeah, I would approve of that, definitely. But this is not, international policy is not my area of expertise at all. So yeah, that's some questions. I hope that was interesting. If this ends up being good and people like it, I'll do this more in future. Thanks, hope you enjoyed. See you next time.